The mansion stood like a sleeping giant behind towering oaks and a wrought iron gate that shimmered with raindrops from the morning drizzle. Lena Torres stood at the entrance, clutching the frayed strap of her canvas bag, her fingers trembling as she rang the intercom. She had never seen anything like this. The stone-paved driveway stretched out like a carpet for royalty, winding toward a house so big it made her feel like a speck of dust. Her shoes, still damp from the walk from the bus station, squeaked slightly as she shifted nervously from foot to foot. "Name?" A voice crackled through the speaker. "Lena Torres," she said, trying to sound confident but failing to hide the catch in her voice. "From the Clean Living Agency." There was a pause. Then the gate creaked open. Lena took a deep breath and stepped inside. Every part of her wanted to turn around and run. She didn't belong here. She was just a girl from Laredo, raised by her grandmother in a cramped trailer park, working odd jobs since she was 12. But Abuela Rosa needed medicine, and Lena needed a paycheck. Pride had no place in survival. The front door opened before she could knock. A tall man in his 50s stood there, angular and austere in a navy suit. His silver hair was combed with military precision. Dr. Richard Evans. She recognized him from the agency profile, renowned cardiac surgeon, philanthropic icon, and something of a ghost in his own household. "You're the new girl?" he asked, his voice dry, emotionless.
"Yes, sir," Lena murmure. "I am Lena."
He looked her over for 2 seconds too long, then nodded.
"Come in."
"House rules are strict. You'll follow them. Any mistakes, you're out." "Understood." Lena nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." He turned without another word and disappeared into a corridor lined with minimalist artwork and glowing floor lights. A woman, perhaps in her 60s, with sharp cheekbones and a tight bun, appeared from behind a pillar. "I'm Ms. Grace," she said, handing Lena a house key card and a folded sheet of rules. "You'll report to me. You sleep upstairs, attic room. Meals are in the back kitchen. No roaming. Especially not into the office wing." Lena gave a small nod, absorbing it all like a sponge.
No roaming.
No mistake. Bien visible.
Ms. Grace led her up the back staircase, marble steps so polished they reflected the overhead chandeliers. The attic room turned out to be a converted storage closet with a cot, a small window, and a fan that clicked every time it turned. "It's fine," Lena whispered to herself once Ms. Grace left. "It's not home, but it's not the streets." She unpacked her modest belongings, a stack of second-hand clothes, a photo of Abuela Rosa, and a worn-out English-Spanish dictionary. She placed them carefully on the narrow shelf and sat on the edge of the cot, willing herself not to cry. Over the next few days, Lena kept her head down. She learned the kitchen routines from Angela, the warm-hearted chef who spoke Spanish when Ms. Grace wasn't around. The drivers, especially a younger one named Tyler, were overly friendly. The gardener, James, rarely spoke but always nodded politely when they passed. But the house was cold, not in temperature, but in spirit. Victoria Evans, the doctor's wife, rarely smiled. She floated through rooms like a perfume you couldn't catch. Her heels clicked authoritatively across marble floors, and her words were clipped like business memos. Once she saw Lena humming a lullaby to Caleb, their 5-year-old son, and said without looking up from her phone, "That's not the kind of noise he needs to grow up with." Caleb, on the other hand, adored Lena. Shy but affectionate, he often wandered into the kitchen just to watch her clean, or handed her his toy cars with solemn instructions, "Keep them safe." He seemed untouched by the sterile glamour of his surroundings, and Lena saw in his eyes the same loneliness she carried. One rainy afternoon, she saw Dr. Evans returning home, exhausted, slumped slightly as he exited his black SUV. He always looked tired, like someone who had built his life brick by brick and now wasn't sure what to do with it. He never greeted her. He barely greeted anyone. But Lena had the strangest feeling every time he passed her, like a cold draft brushing against her skin. He never looked at her, but something told her he noticed everything. A week into her job, Lena climbed to the second floor to return Caleb's book. She passed the office wing, marked clearly by 2 dark wooden doors. "Don't roam," she remembered. But she heard a faint sound from inside, like the wind rattling shelves. The door was slightly ajar. Just a peek, she told herself. Just enough to see if anything had fallen. Inside, the room smelled of cedarwood and something sharper, perhaps a cologne. Walls lined with books. Diplomas. Surgical diagrams framed in sleek black glass. A mahogany desk with paperweights shaped like hearts. She stepped inside. She shouldn't have. Something in her turned cold, even though the room was warm. She placed Caleb's book on the side table and turned to leave, but knocked against a sideboard. A thin porcelain vase toppled, crashed.
The sound split the silence.
Lena froze.
Footsteps upstairs.
Or was it just her heart? She bent down, trying to gather the pieces, and her eyes landed on a folder wedged behind the cabinet. Medical files. Her hands trembled as she pulled it free.
Torres.
Female. DOB, 2004. Her breath hitched. The photo attached was a baby.
D'Arcaïr, Olive Skin, à Tiny Birtmark under the left ear, just like her. A cold sweat bloomed down her back.
Why was her name in this house? Before she could think, she heard a voice behind her. What do you think you're doing? Ms. Grace. And she wasn't alone. Ms. Grace's sharp voice sliced through the air like a whip. Lena spun around, guilt flooding her face, fragments of porcelain still clutched in her hands. I was just returning Caleb's book.
The door was open.
I didn't mean to, she stammered, holding up the file without realizing it. Ms. Grace's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. Her gaze dropped to the folder, then to the broken vase. What's that in your hand? She asked coldly. Lena quickly set the file on the desk. I didn't read it. I just picked it up when I was cleaning. The older woman stepped forward, plucked the folder from the desk, and slid it into a locked drawer with a quiet click. Then she turned to Lena, her face unreadable. You broke a priceless vase and entered a restricted room without permission, she said, voice low and tense. I could have you removed from this house immediately. Lena's chest tightened. Please, I'm sorry. I'll pay for the vase. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was only trying to help. Ms. Grace studied her a moment longer, then exhaled through her nose. We'll see what Dr. Evans decides.
Go to your room.
Now. Lena turned and fled, her heart pounding in her ears. Upstairs, in the narrow attic room, she sat on the cot, knees pulled to her chest, trying to make sense of what she had seen. The baby in the photo.
The name. The birthmark.
Was it possible? No. It had to be a coincidence. Maybe the file wasn't even hers. The last name Torres was common enough. But the date of birth matched. And that photo, it was like looking into a mirror of her infancy. She barely slept that night. Every creak of the house made her jump. She kept expecting someone to come knock on her door, to tell her to pack up and leave. But morning came, and no one did. At breakfast, Angela greeted her with a soft smile, handing her a mug of coffee. Rough night? She asked. Lena nodded cautiously. Yeah, just nerves. Angela glanced around, lowered her voice. Ms. Grace can be intense.
Don't let her get to you.
You're doing fine. Lena nodded again, grateful for the kindness. It was the first warmth she'd felt since arriving. Still, her stomach twisted when she saw Dr. Evans walk through the kitchen on his way to his car, briefcase in hand. He didn't look at her. Didn't say a word.
Invisible.
Later that day, Caleb wandered into the laundry room while Lena was folding towels. His wide eyes searched hers as he hugged his stuffed bear tightly. Did you get in trouble? He asked quietly. Lena forced a smile.
Just a little.
But I'm okay. Mom says you shouldn't touch things that aren't yours. Lena crouched down to meet his gaze.
She's right.
I made a mistake. But that doesn't mean I don't care about this place. Or about you. Caleb frowned, as if weighing her words in his small head. Then he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around her neck.
I like you.
Her throat tightened as she hugged him back.
I like you too, buddy.
The days passed slowly after that. No one spoke of the vase or the file. Ms. Grace resumed her usual stern but distant demeanor. Dr. Evans remained a ghost in his own home, barely there, his presence more a shadow than a man. Victoria Evans, however, seemed to grow more suspicious of Lena by the day. One afternoon, Lena was wiping the windows in the sunroom when Victoria entered, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. I heard about the vase, she said without preamble. Lena paused, cloth in hand.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm really sorry. Victoria's gaze was cool, clinical. That piece was part of a matched pair from Kyoto.
Irreplaçable.
I'll do whatever I can to make up for it, Lena said quickly.
Victoria tiltait de raide.
And what exactly do you think you can offer? A few dollars from your paycheck? Do you even have a bank account? Lena felt the heat rise in her face. She forced herself not to look away. I'm not here to take anything from you, she said. I'm just trying to earn a living. Victoria walked closer, the silk of her blouse whispering against her tailored slacks. She looked Lena over, her lips tightening. You people always say that. Just trying to survive. But survival is not the same as belonging.
Don't confuse the two.
With that, she turned and left, leaving Lena gripping the cloth so tightly her knuckles turned white. You people. The words clanged in Lena's chest like a bell of shame and fury. She had heard them before, at school, at the grocery store, from people who saw her brown skin and assumed poverty equaled inferiority. But here in this house, it cut deeper. Because no matter how hard she worked, she would never be seen as more than help.
An outsider.
That night, she couldn't stop thinking about the file.
The photograph.
The way Dr. Evans had stared at her, just once, like he knew something. Was it possible she had been brought here for a reason? Or was it fate? Downstairs, through the crack of her door, she heard hushed voices.
À Manen da Women Arguin, Victoria and Richard.
The words weren't clear, but the tension was. Something was unraveling in this perfect house. Lena lay back on her cot, staring at the ceiling fan clicking above her, her mind spinning. She had come here for money. For medicine. For a better shot at life. But now, she wasn't sure what she had stepped into. Whatever it was bigger than broken vases and cold stares. Something was hidden here. And she intended to find it.
Tridez passait in une asie silence.
Lena waited for some kind of repercussion from the incident in Dr. Evans's office, but none came. No words.
No confrontation.
Just a thick, invisible fog of tension that hung in the air every time she crossed paths with Ms. Grace or Victoria. Caleb remained her only reprieve. The boy had become her shadow, trailing after her with quiet devotion. He would sit in the kitchen while she scrubbed pans, or hum tunes with her while folding laundry. His presence softened the edges of her days, even as the weight of uncertainty pressed harder on her chest. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the file. About the baby in the photo. About the name that matched her own. A coincidence, perhaps. But too perfect to ignore. Late one afternoon, after finishing her chores early, Lena found herself outside the office wing again. The double doors loomed at the end of the hall, tall and dark like the entrance to some sacred place she wasn't allowed to enter. She hesitated. It was against the rules. But then again, the rules had already been broken. She glanced down the hallway. No one. Her fingers wrapped around the brass handle. The door creaked open a few inches. The scent of wood polish and leather filled her nostrils. The room was exactly as she remembered, vast, clinical, and immaculately arranged. She stepped inside, heart pounding. The desk stood at the center, the drawer where Ms. Grace had locked away the file still closed.
No key in sight.
She turned toward the wall of bookshelves. Medical journals. Textbooks. Framed photographs. One of them caught her eye, a photo of Dr. Evans in his late 30s, holding a newborn in a hospital blanket. The woman beside him wasn't Victoria. She looked younger, her smile small and uncertain, her eyes downcast.
Lena stepped closer.
The baby had a tiny mark beneath one ear. Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just a match. It was her. A sound echoed from the hallway, footsteps. Panic surged through her. She turned to the door, but it was too late. The handle turned. Dr. Evans stepped into the room, stopping short when he saw her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His face was unreadable, his eyes shadowed and tired. You're not supposed to be in here, he said quietly. Lena swallowed. I know. I'm sorry. I saw the photo. I had to know. He didn't respond. He walked to the desk slowly, placing his briefcase on the polished surface, his movements deliberate. Lena remained frozen, her hands clasped in front of her like a child caught stealing candy. "I've seen that birthmark before," he said, still not looking at her. "But I didn't want to believe it. Not at first."
Lena's voice trembled.
"Is that baby me?" He finally met her eyes. "Yes."
The word it like a thunderclap.
Lena felt the floor sway beneath her feet. "I don't understand," she whispered. Dr. Evans exhaled, sank into the leather chair behind the desk, and folded his hands. 18 years ago, I had a daughter," he began. "Her name was never officially recorded. Her mother was a resident at the hospital where I worked, young, brilliant, but from the wrong side of everything. She got pregnant, and I failed her." Lena's fists clenched at her sides.
You left her.
"I was pressured. My family, my reputation, everything was on the line. I was engaged to Victoria at the time. She found out about the affair and gave me an ultimatum. If I wanted to keep my life intact, I had to let the child go." "And you did," Lena said, voice cold now. "I did," he admitted. "But I never stopped wondering. Never stopped looking, in my own way.
When your name came through the agency record, it triggered something.
Then I saw you. And it was like seeing a ghost." Lena's throat burned. "All this time, I thought I was just another poor girl trying to survive. But I was your daughter. And you what? Hired me as a maid." His expression tightened. "I didn't know for sure."
You wasn't ready to face the truth. Lena looked, bitter and sharp.
"Well, here it is. Truth in all its glory." She turned toward the door, but his voice stopped her.
Lena.
"Please." She paused, hand on the knob. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said. "But I want to fix what I can. You don't have to stay in this house, or pretend this didn't happen. But you deserve to know where you came from." She didn't turn around. "Where I came from was a trailer with a broken sink and a woman who gave up everything to raise me. That's my real family." And she walked out.
Upstairs, in the attic room, she sat on the couch, her chest low.
Her father. He had been right in front of her, and yet so far away. Now the truth sat heavy in her lap, offering no comfort. Just more questions. That night, a letter was slipped under her door.
No envelope.
Just a sheet of white paper with elegant handwriting. "She doesn't want you here.
You'll never belong."
There was no signature. Lena stared at the words, her heart thudding. She folded the paper carefully and slid it into the back of her dictionary. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. But something inside her shifted. She wasn't just here to survive anymore. She was here to uncover every lie that had ever been told in this house. And she was just getting started. The rain began around midnight, soft at first, then pounding like footsteps across the roof of the mansion. Lena lay awake in her attic room, her eyes wide in the dark, the letter from her supposed father replaying in her mind like a haunting song she couldn't forget. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't forget the look in his eyes, or the fact that a man who had ruined her mother's life had let her scrub his floors without a word. It didn't matter if he felt guilt now. It didn't undo 18 years of absence.
The walls felt too close. The air too heavy.
She sat up, pulled on her jacket, and slipped outside, careful not to wake Caleb or Angela. The marble floors were slick beneath her sneakers as she crept downstairs and through the service hallway that led to the side garden. The rain was cold, but refreshing, clean, like a baptism. Lena stepped into it without hesitation, letting the water soak her hair, her clothes, her skin. She walked aimlessly toward the stone path at the back of the property, where the hedges grew tall and the city lights faded into shadows. She didn't hear the door open behind her.
Lena.
His voice wasn't loud. It was barely audible over the rain, but it froze her in place. She turned slowly. Dr. Evans stood under the overhang of the back terrace, no umbrella, no coat, his white shirt already damp and clinging to his frame. "You shouldn't be out here," he said. Lena folded her arms tightly across her chest. "Neither should you." They stared at each other for a long moment. "I know this doesn't make sense," he said. "I know it's too much. But I didn't expect to find you.
Not like this.
And when I did, I didn't know how to act." "You mean you didn't know how to lie again?" she snapped. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He walked forward a few steps, stopping short of her. I've spent most of my life making the right choices for the wrong reasons, he said. My career. My marriage.
My publique image.
Everything built on what looked perfect, not what was true. But I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped regretting what I did. Lena blinked the rain from her eyes. You could have looked harder. I did, he said. Your mother disappeared before I could stop her. She changed names, moved towns, refused to speak to anyone who knew me. By the time I found out she had passed, there was no trail left.
Lena brisiched.
She died. He nodded slowly. 2 years ago. Cervical cancer. The words hit her like a wave. She had always wondered about her mother, about why she had vanished from the picture, why Abuela Rosa never spoke her name. Now the truth came not from love, but from a man who hadn't deserved to speak it. She was alone, Lena whispered. I don't know, he said. But she gave birth to you. She named you. And she gave you to someone she trusted. That was her final choice. And it brought you here. Lena looked down at the gravel, the water swirling around her shoes. She thought about the photo on his desk. The baby with the same mark.
The Samais.
How do I know this isn't some twisted coincidence? She asked. Maybe I just remind you of her. Maybe you feel guilty and want to believe something that makes you feel better. He didn't flinch. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small folded envelope. A paternity test, he said. I had it done the day after the vase incident. The agency kept your application. I matched your DNA to mine through medical records I had access to. He extended the envelope toward her, but she didn't take it. I don't need proof, she said. I already feel the truth. I just don't know what to do with it. For the first time since she had known him, Richard Evans looked small. Not physically, but emotionally. Like a man who had built an empire and finally realized the foundation had always been cracked. You don't owe me anything, he said. Not love. Not forgiveness. But I owe you everything. I can't change what happened. But I can start telling the truth.
Lena shook her head.
You say that, but you're still married to a woman who would rather see me on the streets than in your life. That's not true, he said. She's complicated. Hurt, in her own way. She's cruel, Lena corrected. And if I'm really your daughter, that means she's my stepmother. And she hates me. He looked away, as if ashamed. She wasn't always like this. Our marriage was already strained when we lost our first child.
A miscarriage.
She never recovered. After that, I became someone else. We both did. Lena stared at him. For the first time, she saw more than just a cold, distant man. She saw a flawed, broken human being, one whose choices had caused irreparable damage. I don't need a father, she said softly. I needed one when I was 5 and scared and alone. When I was 13 and bleeding in a school bathroom because no one told me what puberty was. When I was 16 and working 2 jobs to buy my grandmother's medicine. Tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. I survived all that.
Without you.
I know, he whispered. But you shouldn't have had to. Silence fell between them, broken only by the steady rhythm of rain. I don't want to live in this house, she said at last. But I'm not leaving either. Not until I understand everything. Not until I know who I am, and why you let me go. Dr. Evans nodded. Then stay. And I'll tell you everything. No more secrets. She turned to walk back toward the house, then paused. I'm not here to be anyone's daughter, she said without looking at him. I'm here for the truth. That's all. And then she left him standing there in the rain, the envelope still in his hand.
The morning after the storm, Lena awoke to sunlight streaming through the attic window and the faint sound of voices downstairs.
Her clothes were still damp from the night before, clinging to her skin like remnants of the truth she could no longer deny. She didn't know what to do with it yet. She only knew that the man she had served as a stranger was, in fact, her father. And now, she had to live with that knowledge in a house where most people would rather forget she existed. By the time she came down for breakfast, the house was alive with tension. Angela gave her a long look as she passed her a plate of toast and eggs, as if sensing something had shifted. You okay? She asked quietly. Lena nodded. Just tired. Angela leaned in, her voice low.
Victoria's note.
She's been pacing since 6.
Something's wrong.
Lena didn't ask what. She already knew. Halfway through her breakfast, the inevitable happened. Victoria entered the kitchen, her heels clicking like hammers against tile. She wore a cream-colored suit, not a single strand of her hair out of place. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes were sharp. "Lena," she said, voice clipped. Lena stood instinctively, the way she always had when summoned by someone in power.
Yes, ma'am. Comme wisme. Angela touchait Lena et souriste, juste briefly, a silent warning.
Lena followed Victoria through the wide hallway and up the sweeping staircase, past portraits of ancestors who had built empires on pristine lies. They entered the sitting room on the second floor, Victoria's domain. Everything was white and gold, as sterile and elegant as a luxury hotel. Victoria closed the door behind them and turned, folding her arms. "My husband told me." Lena didn't ask what. She could see it in her eyes. "I suppose I should be shocked," Victoria continued. "But I'm not. I always suspected Richard had secrets. I just never imagined they would come in the form of a housemaid." Lena kept her expression neutral. "I didn't ask to be here." "No," Victoria said, "but you stayed." "I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. I stayed because I needed a job. I stayed because your son needed someone who actually looked at him when he spoke."
Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare bring Caleb into this."
"I'm not bringing him into anything," Lena said. "But I won't pretend this isn't happening."
Victoria walked slowly to the window, her back to Lena.
"You look like her," she said.
The woman Richard betrayed me with.
"Same skin. Same eyes.
Some défiance."
Lena remained silent. "I was going to leave him," Victoria continued. "Back then. But I was young, angry, and too proud. And when she vanished with the child, I thought maybe it was over. I thought I had won." She turned around, her face hard. "But now she's dead."
And you're here.
"I didn't come to destroy your life," Lena said. "I didn't even know he was my father." "But you do now," Victoria said. "And that changes everything." Lena met her gaze without flinching. "I'm not asking for anything. Not money. Not family dinners.
Just the truth." Victoria looked, cold, bitter. "The truth? You want the truth? Here's the truth.
This house runs on illusion. Always has."
You pull back the curtain, everything falls apart.
"Maybe it should," Lena said softly. Victoria stared at her for a long moment, then walked to the door. "You're not as naive as you look," she said. "But be careful, Lena. People who dig too deep don't always like what they find." She left without another word. Lena stood in the empty room for a long time after that, letting the silence wrap around her like a warning. She wasn't afraid of Victoria. But she understood now that the fight ahead wouldn't just be about truth. It would be about survival. Because in this house, truth wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous. That afternoon, while cleaning out a linen closet on the second floor, Lena found something strange, a small slip of paper tucked between folded sheets. At first, she thought it was a grocery list. But when she unfolded it, her stomach dropped.
She doesn't belong here.
Neither did the last one.
No signature.
No handwriting she recognized. Her hands trembled.
The last one?
What did that mean? Was there another girl?
Another secret?
She tucked the note into her back pocket and continued cleaning, though her mind was miles away. Later that evening, Caleb found her in the garden. He ran up and hugged her waist, looking up with worried eyes. "Mom was yelling earlier," he said. "She told Dad he was stupid."
Lena crouched down.
Sometimes grown-ups argue when they don't know what else to do.
"Are you gonna leave?"
"I don't know," Lena said honestly. "I don't want you to," he whispered.
"You're my favorite."
She hugged him tightly, feeling a tear slide down her cheek. She wiped it before he could see. That night, as the house settled into silence, Lena sat on her cot with the mysterious note in her hands. She thought about what Victoria had said.
About illusion.
About digging too deep. She didn't care. She was already in too far to turn back. And someone in this house had secrets they were willing to threaten her over. She just had to find out who. The sky was clear and deceptively calm the next morning, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within the Evans household. Lena moved through her tasks as usual, but her senses were sharper, her nerves pulled taut like strings on a violin. The note she had found echoed in her thoughts. She doesn't belong here. Neither did the last one. She had reread it a dozen times, trying to decipher its meaning. Who was the last one? Another girl?
Un hasard se créburier benéat the élégance of Riverock?
Whatever it meant, Lena was certain of one thing: it was a threat. And it wasn't just about her anymore. That afternoon, Caleb asked to play outside. Victoria wasn't home, and Dr. Evans had left for a late surgery consultation. Lena agreed, thinking the garden would at least offer a temporary refuge. She watched him from the bench near the fountain, his laughter ringing through the air as he ran circles around the hedge maze. Angela brought out a small snack, a few cookies and a juice box, and placed them on the table beside Lena before heading back inside. Lena turned for only a moment, responding to a text from Angela asking if she had seen a missing spice rack. When she looked up again, Caleb was sitting on the grass, holding something in his hand. A piece of candy. Lena stood abruptly. "Caleb, where did you get that?" she asked, walking quickly toward him. He looked up, cheeks already puffed, the candy half dissolved in his mouth. "A man gave it to me. He was by the fence. He said it would make my cold go away." Lena's blood ran cold. "What man?" she asked, kneeling in front of him. Caleb pointed vaguely toward the back hedge. "He had a gray hat. I didn't see his face." Lena looked around, scanning the perimeter, but whoever it was had vanished. "Caleb, how do you feel?" she asked urgently. "My tummy hurts," he said, curling into himself. Panic surged. She scooped him into her arms, running toward the house. "Angela," she shouted. "Call 911. Inside, chaos erupted. Angela dropped the pan she was holding and grabbed her phone. Ms. Grace appeared in the hallway, pale and confused. Lena placed Caleb on the dining room floor, gently turning him on his side as he whimpered. "What did he eat?" Angela asked, crouching beside them. "A piece of candy someone gave him through the fence," Lena said. "He's allergic to certain dyes, right?" Angela's eyes widened. "Yes. Red food dye. It triggers his asthma." Caleb began to cough violently, and Lena acted on instinct. She grabbed his emergency inhaler from the drawer near the kitchen and pressed it gently to his lips, coaching him to breathe. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They checked his vitals, stabilized his breathing, and rushed him to the nearest children's hospital. Lena rode in the ambulance, holding his hand the entire way, her heart pounding with fear and rage. At the hospital, while Caleb was being treated, Lena sat in the waiting room, soaked in sweat, her hands still trembling. Dr. Evans arrived less than 30 minutes later, his tie askew, his face drawn. "What happened?" he demanded. Lena explained everything: the candy, the stranger, the allergic reaction. She could see his anger building with every word. "They're running tests now," she said. "They think he'll be okay, but they're keeping him overnight for observation." Dr. Evans ran a hand through his hair. "Where the hell was security? They don't monitor the side fences. It's just hedges and a garden. No cameras." His jaw clenched. "That changes today." Lena hesitated before speaking. This wasn't an accident. He turned to her slowly. "You think someone did this on purpose?" She nodded. "I got a note yesterday. It said I didn't belong. And neither did the last one. I think someone in that house, or close to it, is trying to scare me.
Meb scare you.
Or hurt Caleb." His eyes darkened. "Do you still have the note?" She pulled it from her jacket pocket and handed it to him. He read it twice, then folded it and slid it into his coat. "I'll take this to the police."
Lena hesitated again.
"What about Victoria?" His expression was unreadable. "She doesn't know. Not yet."
Do you trust her?
He looked at her, long and hard. "I used to." Lena wanted to ask more, but a nurse came in, informing them that Caleb had stabilized and would be allowed visitors soon. When they entered the recovery room, Caleb was pale but smiling weakly. "Lena," he whispered. I don't like that candy. She laughed softly, brushing the hair from his forehead. I know, buddy. No more mystery candy. Ever. Dr. Evans stood at the foot of the bed, silent, watching the two of them. After a moment, he cleared his throat. I'm assigning a full-time guard to the property. I'll review every person who works in that house, from the gardener to the staff. If someone's behind this, we'll find them. Lena nodded. Good. Because if something like this happens again, I won't just walk away. He didn't respond, but his eyes softened. They stayed at the hospital overnight. Victoria arrived in the early hours, appearing flustered and vaguely annoyed. She kissed Caleb's forehead but didn't ask for details. Instead, she spoke with the doctor in private and left soon after, saying she had a board meeting in the morning. Lena watched her go, something heavy settling in her chest. This wasn't over. Someone had crossed a line. And next time, they might not stop at a warning. 2 days after Caleb was discharged from the hospital, the mansion was quieter than usual. The marble halls, once bustling with staff and guests, now felt hollow, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Security cameras had been installed along the fence line. A guard was posted near the garden during daylight hours. The staff was instructed to report any suspicious activity, and Dr. Evans had already begun background checks on every employee, new and old. But tension lingered. It wrapped around every conversation, every glance, every creaking floorboard. Something had shifted permanently. Lena kept close to Caleb during the day, helping him recover his strength, reading to him, keeping him distracted from the fact that no one had been arrested, no suspect named. At night, she combed through household records, contracts, payroll rosters. Dr. Evans had quietly allowed her access, trusting that her instincts might uncover what protocols could not. One evening, while sorting through medical files stored in a private digital folder Dr. Evans had shared with her, Lena found something she wasn't supposed to see. It was a second DNA file. The name at the top of the document made her stomach twist. Caleb Evans. Her eyes scanned the page, her pulse hammering in her ears. Father, Richard Evans, confirmed. Mother, Victoria Evans, inconclusive. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, rereading the results, the tiny asterisks, the footnotes. She wasn't a geneticist, but the conclusion was clear. Caleb was Dr. Evans's biological son. But not Victoria's. It didn't make sense. Caleb was born within their marriage. Everyone in the house, in the city, believed him to be the couple's only child. Her first thought was that it had to be a mistake. But the document was legitimate. It was signed by a physician from the same hospital network where Dr. Evans worked. The date on the test was from years ago, around the time Caleb was born. Lena's hands were trembling as she shut the laptop. Later that night, she approached Dr. Evans in his study. He was seated at his desk, reading through a medical journal, a glass of bourbon untouched beside him. I found something, she said quietly. He looked up, his eyes tired. Go on. She placed the printed DNA results on his desk, watching his reaction. He didn't flinch. He didn't even look surprised. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, she said. I was just going through files and... It's all right, he interrupted. I knew you'd find it eventually. Lena sat down in the chair across from him, her voice cautious. So it's true. He nodded slowly. Victoria isn't Caleb's biological mother. No, she's not. Then who is? He leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. Her name was Madeline Harper. She was a nurse at the hospital where I worked. It was complicated. I was still married. Victoria and I had grown distant, but we were still trying to present a united front in public. Madeline and I. We didn't plan on a child. But when she found out, she refused to terminate the pregnancy. I told her I'd take responsibility. Lena tried to absorb the information. So why does the world think Victoria is his mother? Because that was the condition, he said. Victoria found out. She was furious, of course. But by then, Madeline had developed complications during the pregnancy. She died during childbirth. Lena sat sank. She died. She named me as the father on the birth certificate. Victoria saw a chance to control the narrative. We paid off the hospital, adjusted the records. To the world, Caleb was our miracle baby. Lena's voice was thin. But she never loved him. No, he admitted. She raised him like a porcelain heirloom. Distant. Dutiful. Never affectionate. I thought time would change that, but it didn't. And now someone tried to poison him, Lena said. He's not just a boy in danger. He's a boy with 2 dead mothers. One who never met him. One who never wanted him. And he's 5 years old. Dr. Evans stared down at the glass of bourbon, as if considering whether to drink it or hurl it across the room. I failed both of you, he said. You and him. I built a life of walls and secrets, and now it's caving in. Lena stood slowly. Then maybe it's time to stop hiding. He deserves to know. Maybe not now, but someday. And so does the world. He looked up at her. That would destroy Victoria. Maybe, Lena said. Or maybe it would just force her to face the truth. The next morning, Victoria returned from a weekend trip to Austin. She came back with new luggage and a carefully applied mask of serenity, as if nothing had happened. Until she walked into the study and saw Lena standing beside Dr. Evans, holding the DNA file. Victoria's face didn't change immediately. It cracked slowly, like porcelain under pressure. What is this? She asked. You know what it is, Lena said. I want to hear him say it, Victoria replied, her voice trembling. Dr. Evans stood. Caleb isn't your biological son. He never was. Silence. Victoria's shoulders rose as she inhaled sharply.
Heure en chou 14
You promised, she whispered. I broke that promise the day I let a nurse die alone while our marriage rotted from within. You said no one would ever find out. I said a lot of things, he replied. But lies can't raise a child. They can't protect him. Victoria's face hardened. And you? Of course it's you, she said to Lena. You come here with your street manners and your accusations. You think you're going to take everything, don't you? Lena didn't blink. I don't want anything from you.
I juste want Caleb safe.
And I want the lies to stop. Victoria stepped back, as if struck. Then she laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. You think the truth is safer? That it's cleaner? That people will praise your honesty? You've never lived among people who matter. No, Lena said, but I've lived among people who care. Victoria turned on her heel and left the room. Dr. Evans looked at Lena, his voice low. I don't know what she'll do. She already did it, Lena said. She built this prison. You just let her decorate it. And for the first time, Dr. Evans didn't defend himself. He just nodded. For 3 days after the confrontation in the study, the house operated like a machine with a broken gear, still moving, still functioning, but grinding in all the wrong places. Victoria withdrew almost entirely. She no longer came down for breakfast, no longer hosted her weekly luncheons, and barely acknowledged the presence of staff. When Lena passed her in the hallway, Victoria didn't look at her, didn't even seem to see her. It was as if Lena had become the ghost she was accused of being from the moment she entered the mansion. Dr. Evans stayed in his office late, longer than usual, sometimes until dawn. Lena heard the low hum of classical music leaking under the door, sometimes interrupted by bursts of anger, shouts muffled by thick oak but still enough to make her flinch. Caleb noticed. He noticed everything. Why is Mommy sad? He asked one morning while Lena tied his shoelaces. She's just tired, Lena answered softly. Did I do something wrong? Lena looked up at him.
No, sweetie.
You didn't do anything wrong. Grown-ups make mistakes too. He nodded like he understood, but his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. Lena couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing in the middle of something long decayed, an old house of cards someone had kept upright by sheer will. But now, the wind had shifted. Secrets had fallen like dominoes, and nothing would be the same. Later that day, Lena found herself back in the garden, the same bench where she had once watched Caleb laugh freely in the sunshine. Now he sat beside her, quieter, clutching a picture book he barely looked at. Do you like living here? He asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. Why do you ask? Because I don't, he said. Everyone's always mad. Lena exhaled. Sometimes places look nice but don't feel like home. Where's your home? He asked. She looked across the garden. I'm still figuring that out. In the evening, she met with Dr. Evans in the kitchen, where Angela had left a late supper warming in the oven. They sat at the island, the silence between them less sharp than usual, but no less heavy. She knows it's over, he said. Lena didn't need to ask who he meant. She hasn't said it out loud, but she's packing her things slowly. In stages. Moving pieces out one by one, as if that might soften the truth. Lena sipped from her mug. You still care about her? I do, he admitted. But not like I used to. What we had was real once. But over time, it became theater. I played the role of perfect husband. She played the role of perfect wife. Neither of us remembered what honesty looked like. And now I want something different. I want to live honestly, even if that means being alone. Lena studied him. For the first time, he didn't seem like the distant figure who had hovered in corridors and vanished into surgeries. He seemed like a man stripped bare, no reputation to protect, no mask left to wear. Have you told Caleb? She asked. Not everything, he said. Not yet. But I will. He deserves the truth. Lena nodded. So do I. He looked at her, eyes steady. Ask me anything. She hesitated. Why didn't you fight harder for me? Why didn't you come find me sooner? I wanted to, he said. But I was a coward. I buried myself in work, in silence. I thought maybe it was better if I didn't interfere with the life you were building. That you were better off without me. I wasn't, Lena said. But I survived anyway. He nodded slowly. And I admire you for that. Silence again. Then Lena set her cup down. I've made a decision. Dr. Evans raised his eyes. I'm not going to stay in this house, she said. Not forever. I've been accepted into a pre-med program. If I can find the money, I'll enroll next semester. A slow smile touched the corner of his mouth. You want to be a doctor. I want to help people. The kind who don't get invited to houses like this. You have my full support, he said. Financially. Logistically. Anything you need. I'm not asking for charity, she said. It's not charity, he replied. It's a father supporting his daughter. The words hit her harder than she expected. She looked away, blinking back the burn in her eyes. Thank you, she said, almost in a whisper. That night, she returned to her room feeling lighter. But that feeling didn't last. The next morning, when she came downstairs, a piece of paper was waiting on the kitchen counter. Typed. Neat. Cold. If you value your future, you'll leave now. Caleb isn't safe with you around. Lena froze. Angela entered the kitchen moments later, saw the paper, and picked it up with a frown. Who left this? I don't know, Lena said. But this is the second time. Angela looked worried. You need to show this to Dr. Evans. I will, Lena said. But first, I want to figure out who's behind it. She turned the note over, looking for clues. The paper was standard, no watermark. The ink was laser printed. Whoever was behind this was careful, someone with access, someone who knew the schedules, the movements, the soft spots. Note à stranger. Someone inside the house. Lena folded the paper and slid it into her pocket. This time, she wasn't afraid. This time, she was ready. The note changeait everything. It wasn't just a threat anymore, it was a promise. A signal. Someone was watching Lena closely enough to know exactly when to strike, where to leave their messages, how to manipulate her fear. And this time, they had mentioned Caleb by name. Lena knew she had to move carefully. She spent the next 2 days observing, quietly cataloging everyone who entered and exited the house, the times they arrived, the rooms they lingered in. She made notes in a small leather journal, tucked safely in the back of her dresser drawer. She trusted no one. Not anymore. Angela had been kind, but that didn't mean she was innocent. Ms. Grace had motives rooted in loyalty to Victoria. The gardener, James, always avoided eye contact. And Tyler, the former driver, had once been dismissed for odd behavior, though Lena remembered how often he smiled a little too long when speaking to her. Even Dr. Evans couldn't be completely exonerated. Not because she believed he'd harm Caleb, but because his silence had enabled so much of the house's darkness for so long. Still, she had to start somewhere. On the third night, Lena faked sleep, leaving her bedroom door slightly ajar. She kept the hallway lights off and waited. At 2:13 a.m., she heard footsteps. Not heavy ones, not rushed. Measured, almost gentle. The sound of someone who believed they belonged, someone who knew the floors and which ones creaked. She slipped out of bed and crept silently into the hallway. From the shadows, she watched a figure, tall, lean, move toward Dr. Evans's office. She followed at a distance. The figure paused at the door, used a key, and slipped inside. Lena waited 15 seconds, then approached. She pressed her ear to the wood. Papers rustled. A drawer opened. She knocked twice, firm and clear. Inside, everything stopped. Then came the voice. "Who's there?" It was Dr. Marshall, a longtime colleague of Dr. Evans. Lena had met him twice, both times during medical luncheons Victoria had hosted months ago. He was charming, articulate, with the polished attachment of someone who'd spent his life in white coats and operating rooms.
Lena pushed the door open slowly.
Dr. Marshall stood behind the desk, his expression neutral, though his hands were still gripping a folder. "I thought this room was off limits after hours," Lena said calmly. "I could say the same to you," he replied. "I heard noises. Thought someone had broken in." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just checking in on a few documents Richard asked me to retrieve." "At 2 in the morning? I keep odd hours." Lena didn't move from the doorway. "Mind if I see which documents?" His smile faded. "Excuse me. If it's official, there's no harm in showing me. I work here. I'm family." The last word was intentional, and it landed with precision. Dr. Marshall straightened. "You're crossing a line." Lena took a step closer.
"So are you."
Silence stretched between them. Then he placed the folder on the desk with deliberate slowness and walked past her, brushing her shoulder as he exited the room. Once he was gone, Lena closed the door and opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of medical records, Caleb's, hers, even Victoria's. But there was something else too. A memo from a medical board regarding a private ethics hearing. Dr. Evans's name was highlighted, along with a list of violations: misuse of patient data, concealment of paternity, falsification of maternity claims. She scanned the bottom of the memo. Reported by Dr. Alan Marshall. It hit her like a wave. This wasn't about protecting Caleb. This wasn't even about punishing Dr. Evans for his mistakes. This was about power. Dr. Marshall had been waiting for the perfect scandal, and now he had one. A hidden daughter. A son born of an affair. A wife unraveling. A household falling apart from within. And Marshall had inserted himself like a scalpel, precise, quiet, lethal. She left the office, locking the door behind her, and went straight to Dr. Evans's bedroom. She knocked once, twice. When he answered, he was already awake. "I need to show you something," she said. They sat together in the kitchen, where she laid out the contents of the folder and told him everything. The late-night visit. The hidden memo. The truth she had found tucked between layers of silence and polished lies. Dr. Evans listened without interruption. When she finished, he closed his eyes, pressing his fingers against his temple. "I trusted him," he said finally. "He was my friend." "He wants your seat on the board," Lena said. "And he's going to use everything that's happened in this house to get it." Dr. Evans nodded slowly. "I'll handle it." "Not alone," Lena said. He looked at her, weary but grateful. "Then we do this together." The next day, Dr. Evans called a private meeting with his legal team. Lena wasn't present, but she knew the energy had changed. His posture was different now, no longer ashamed, no longer hiding. He was preparing to fight. Victoria, upon hearing the news, locked herself in her room. Angela brought Lena tea later that night. She said little, but her eyes were wide with something between fear and respect. "You're brave," she said. "More than anyone in this house." "I'm just tired of pretending," Lena replied. Angela hesitated, then added, "I've seen Dr. Marshall here before. Late hours. He was always looking for something. And now I wonder how much he already took." Lena took a deep breath. Enough to try to ruin a life. Angela nodded. Be careful. Men like that don't lose quietly. Lena watched the lights go out in the hallway one by one. The house fell into its usual stillness. But it wasn't silence anymore. It was the calm before something bigger. And this time, Lena wasn't waiting for the storm. She was going to walk into it. The hearing took place behind closed doors, as most powerful confrontations did in Houston's medical elite circles. Dr. Richard Evans stood before the Board of Ethics, flanked by his counsel, facing questions that had less to do with medicine and more to do with morality. Lena sat outside the chamber, Caleb's small hand in hers. He didn't fully understand what was happening, only that his dad was in trouble, and that Lena had become the one constant in a world full of shifting loyalties. When the doors finally opened, Dr. Evans stepped out. His face was unreadable, but his eyes met Lena's with a quiet finality. I'm stepping down from the board, he said simply. Lena didn't ask why. She knew he had chosen it. Not because they had forced him, but because it was the only way forward with integrity intact. That night, back at the mansion, the tension that had once lived in every wall seemed to melt, like ice finally giving in to spring. Victoria had left earlier that day, her luggage taken quietly, without farewell. She had said nothing to Caleb, nothing to Lena. Only a short note left in the guest room. I don't know how to fix what I helped break. But maybe now, someone else can. Dr. Evans read it once and folded it neatly, placing it in a drawer. I suppose that's the closest thing to closure we'll ever get, he said. Lena didn't respond. She wasn't sure if closure was ever really real.
Some wound juste scarred over.
In the weeks that followed, the house changed. It wasn't louder, but it felt fuller. Music sometimes drifted through the rooms, soft jazz or Caleb's cartoons. Angela laughed more often. Ms. Grace retired suddenly, citing family obligations. Lena suspected she had been pressured to leave, but neither she nor Dr. Evans ever brought it up again. One evening, Lena stood in the empty garden, where so much had started. The same bench.
The same edge.
But everything felt different now. The wind no longer whispered threats. It carried something gentler. Possibility. Dr. Evans joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. Vanilla chamomile, he said.
Angela insisted.
Lena took the cup and smiled faintly. She's determined to turn me into a tea drinker. She's always been persuasive. They sat in silence for a moment. I put in your enrollment deposit, he said finally. Pre-med at the University of Texas.
Spring semester.
Lena stared down at her tea. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. I don't want your money to be an apology. It's not. It's a beginning. Lena nodded slowly. Then thank you. I'll still cover your tuition, he added, but you'll need to work. Volunteer hours. Internships. Long nights. I expected nothing less. And, he added with a half-smile, you'll need to buy your own stethoscope.
Chilogued. Faire neuf.
There was a pause. Then Lena turned toward him. You know, I don't hate you. His expression shifted, surprised. You should, he said quietly. I did, she admitted. But it's exhausting. And you're trying. That matters more now. He looked away, blinking. Caleb still thinks of you as his sister, he said. I think of him as my brother. He asks for you when he wakes up from naps. I think he believes you're the only one who won't leave. I won't, she said firmly. But I can't stay here forever either. He nodded. I know. They drank their tea as the sky darkened, the first stars blinking into view. A week later, Lena packed her things. The attic room had long since been updated. New sheets, a proper desk, even a small bookshelf Dr. Evans had quietly filled with anatomy guides and flashcards. Caleb helped her fold clothes, placing his favorite drawing, a crayon sketch of the 2 of them, into her suitcase. When are you coming back? He asked. I'll visit on weekends, she said. And on holidays. And we'll FaceTime. He frowned. That's not the same. She cupped his face gently. I'm not going far. I'm just going to school. So I can be a doctor. Like your dad. But nicer, Caleb added. She grinned. A little. On the day she left, Angela hugged her tightly, whispering, You've changed this house, you know. I think the house changed me too, Lena said. Dr. Evans carried her last bag to the car. Before she climbed in, he extended a small velvet box. Inside was a pendant, simple silver, shaped like a heart, engraved with her name. It belonged to your mother, he said. She wore it when she worked night shifts. Said it reminded her that love was still real, even when everything else wasn't. Lena closed the box gently. I'll take care of it, she said. He nodded, his voice rough. Take care of yourself too. The drive to Austin was quiet. Lena watched the city fall away behind her, the skyline melting into fields and highways. For the first time, the road ahead felt like hers. College was harder than she expected. The classes were brutal. The hours long. She worked evenings at a small clinic, mostly mopping floors and organizing charts. But she was there. In the place she had once only dreamed about. And every week, she called Caleb. They talked about school and life, and sometimes nothing at all. On her birthday he sent her a drawing, this time of a hospital, with her standing out front in a white coat and a big uneven smile. Below it, he'd written in crooked letters, Dr. Lena.
The best one.
She kept it above her desk, pinned between chemistry notes and flashcards. One evening, after a particularly grueling exam, she sat on her dorm bed and stared out the window. The sky outside looked like the one above the mansion garden, wide, uncertain, and full of stories. She had lost so much. But she had found something too.
Not juste à fater.
Not just a brother. But herself.
Lena Torres.
Not a maid. Not a mistake. A student. A sister. A survivor. And someday soon, a healer.